We can.
Yeah, welcome back to the M365 FM podcast, the podcast where we explore Microsoft AI, Copilot, Power Platform, and the technologies that shape in the future of work. Over the past years, we have seen an exploding of AI agents, but with thousands of agents potentially being created inside an organization comes a new challenge. Who govern them, who secure them, who decide what they can access. Today's guest is helping define that future. To joining me today is Thomas Tu, Product Marketing Manager for Microsoft Copilot Studio, with a strong focus on agent governance, helping organizations scale AI safely while empowering innovation. Today, we discussed about Copilot Studio governance, security, lifecycle management, compliance, IT leadership, and why governance is not a blocker. It's a foundation of enterprise AI success. Yeah, welcome, Thomas, to the Answer 65 podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, Marco, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about governance for agents.
Yeah, that's really interesting. But before we deep dive into the topic, can you tell a little bit about your journey, how you end up on Microsoft?
Yeah. Well, I started as a journalist. So I was
Hmm.
born and raised in China. I started as a journalist. So to me, storytelling and narratives are always very important to me, and that is fundamentally how I think about my work. Is tell stories of the product, tell stories of the users of our product. And then after graduating from grad school, I went to a startup for a couple of years, and then in 2022, I joined Microsoft. And my journey within Microsoft has been um, full of adventures as well. So I was a PMM working on the security side of things, so Defender, and then
Hmm.
earlier 2026, I joined the Copilot Studio team as the PMM covering governance for the
Hmm.
platform.
Yeah, what does a product marketing manager actually do?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, so my way about thinking product marketing manager is really if you divide the traditional founder's role into two parts, one is more technical, one is more go-to-market focused, then you would say that the more technical side of the product owner might be the product manager. And then the more go-to-market, the more sales or enablement side of the uh, product owner or founder would be the product marketing manager. They're really two sides of the same coin. More specifically, what I do on a day-to-day basis is a couple of things. One is the positioning and the messaging of the product. So, different people have different opinions about what the product is good at, what the product is not good at, or how to differentiate. But what potentially want to do is to summarize a systematic way to talk about what makes the product unique, and then make sure that we convey that value clearly with our core audience, which is IDMs. The second one is go-to-market strategy. So defining how do you sell the product, defining how can you engage with our customers so that they can trust you, so that they can understand your value proposition. And the third one is content strategy. So similar to what we're doing right now. So we use different content forums, we use different content formats to talk about the value proposition and the differentiation of the platform.
Yeah, and did you self use Copilot in your daily work?
Oh yeah, I joined this team because I'm a big fan of the product. Um, and I just felt like this is such a wave that I cannot miss. And I felt like, generative AI and agentic AI is the future. And, I really want to be a part of it. That was one of the bigger incentives.
Yeah, interesting. So actually, I say every company wants AI agent, but a few organizations have a governance strategy. So what exactly is an agent, or what exactly is agent governance?
Right. So there's so many different ways of defining agent governance and different depending on who you ask. The practitioner
Hmm.
view and the leadership view and the analyst view might be different. But from my side, My personal
Mhm,
take on it is a quite simple one, is how do you enable makers to innovate?
mhm,
Right? So it's the you can say it's the policy, you can say it's the process, you can say it's the technology, but ultimately the goal of governance is not to become the AI police and then say what you can and cannot do is really to build a foundational infrastructure and framework so that your makers who are the main adopters of agent within an organization can feel confident about how to innovate, how to experiment, and how to deploy, how to scale. Those set of rules or policy or process, however you call it, uh, together makes up to the agent governance.
mhm, mhm. Uh, did you see, yeah, misconceptions companies have about agent governance?
Yeah, all the time. I think a lot of people, when they think about governance, they have this very bleak and steer view of someone that's really strict about policy and tell people, hey, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. Or people think that governance is really just about blocking everything, or governance is about turning off things, not allowing makers to innovate and build, right? In fact, for the longest time, that is governance. That is how you prevent risks from happening without, giving the right channels and opportunities for makers to innovate and build. But with modern technology, with the infrastructure that you have, with Copilot Studio or other products, you can really have that granularity and layers of management and governance so that you don't have to always trade off one another between innovation and risks. You can have good control over risks while also enable or facilitate innovation. That is ultimately, I think, what makes up good and bad governance.
And when or where should governance begin?
Yeah, I would say it usually for let's use a fictional organization as an example. One thing we typically tell our customers is that from our observation, the adopters and the facilitators or the administrators of the AI adoption within an organization are usually not the same group of people, right? And the people who are responsible for AI governance a lot of times are IT admins. And you asked the question of where to begin. I would say that it should begin with IT. It should begin with IT having a very good view about the
Mhm,
reality and the readiness of the organization in
mm,
terms of a couple of aspects, right? AI
mm,
strategy, whether they have a good foundation for AI education, readiness for in different AI technology and business strategy. Do they have good business process mapping? And then do they have the good cultural and behavioral enablement for their organization and employees? And then moving on from there, it's more so the governance and security. Okay, now if your organization is already ready for AI agent adoption, do they have the right kind of fallback mechanism when things go wrong? There's a process in which you should think about adoption and governance and security, and then we have some really good content around this called AI readiness, agent readiness framework, or agent readiness assessment that helps IT admins to go through a survey for free and then quickly understand where they are in their agent adoption journey. But yeah, I think it should start with IT assessing, understanding their reality, and then setting up a plan for their entire organization to adopt agents.
and is it something like a maturity model, you have there for, yeah, measure the readiness, or how is it works?
Yeah, you're right, Michael. It is like a maturity model. So we worked with analyst firms and also our internal customer adoption teams to basically summarize and synthesize the patterns of which the major customers are adopting agents. And then we identify different stages of readiness and maturity for these customers. And then we also have recommendations for what customers should do. Um, when I have identified they're in a certain maturity model, right? So because when you are when you when it's the first time for you to hear about agent, then your call to actions and mechanism to adopt agent might be very different from a team that already have like three different tenants running four different governance models that needs to be consolidated. So we try to be customizable. We try to be flexible with our guidance and enablement. Ultimately, what we're trying to do in here is really to establish a AI center of excellence. We found a lot of the times agent adoption doesn't come from the bottom up necessarily. It's a two-way street, right? You need to have interest and passion from makers, but you also need guidance from what we call like a governing body or a group of people who have a lot of expertise and best practices that pass down those knowledge and upskill
Mm,
the rest of the folks.
mm. It's like the champion program, right?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Um, I think when it comes to governance, there are, yeah, two teams in the innovation team and the control team. So, how did we find the balance between innovation and control?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, we have a good content series on YouTube, specifically on the Power Platform community channel and the Copilot Studio YouTube channel talking about this. It's called Agents Under Control. It talks about IT's point of view on how to potentially adopt and govern agents. But to answer your question, we just talked about this in an episode called What is Zone Governance? The answer is
Mhm.
basically zone governance. And this is a term that is not invented necessarily by Microsoft. It is really an industry agreed upon pattern. I'm sure you have heard of it. First brought out by Gartner and other analyst firms, but really it's a model for setting different governance policies and different boundaries for different types of innovation and adoption. Right? Let's say if you have a group of users that are really, really experimental. They just want to play. They just want to have a sense of understanding of the product. Then the risk tolerance level for this group of users might be very different from workloads or apps or agents that needs to go into production that connects with actual business data and exposed to the customer. Right. So the idea is you define different innovation and risk tolerance based on different policy controls within what we typically use Power Platform Admin Center or Microsoft 365 Admin Center. And then you set the different policy template for these zones. So we typically zones into three or four buckets, typically three: the green zone, the yellow zone, and the red zone.
Mhm.
And the risk based on the colors, but the uh, restrictions and governance level of control also increase. So the
Mhm.
idea is that for lower risk agents, innovation, you can put them into an environment with a
Mhm.
lot more connector, with a lot more components allowed, with policy setup, like advanced connector policy, let's say IP fireworks, etc., firewalls, but you don't allow that environment to be accessible to a lot of people. Maybe that is just a personal environment that is only accessible from that user itself. So you can play with it, but you cannot share as much. You cannot expose that innovate those innovation as much to people. The yellow zone is kind
Mhm.
of the middle zone where you have some testing going on, where you have some sharing going on. Say, a individual has already built a agent that is he thinks or she thinks is ready for testing and wanted their IT analyst to take a look and can put that particular agent into the yellow zone. Yellow zone have
Mhm.
a little bit more sharing flexibility, but also comes with that is more scrutiny with regard to its data, with regard to its sharing policy. And the red zone might be a production zone where everything is business centric, where everything is sensitive. So if you want to put things in there, you have to go through the approval of ITM. And so by defining those different zones, we help IT admins and their makers really adopt different level of risks quite quickly.
Mm, yeah, you're product marketing manager for Copilot Studio. So, how did Copilot Studio support governance today?
Well, Copilot Studio itself is a largely it's an agent building platform, right? So the governance structure around it is across different places. The
Mhm.
because it's a product born out of the Power Platform family, a lot of people know this. The majority
Mhm.
of controls and admin knobs, if you may, exist in the Power Platform admin center. That said, Power Platform admin center is a place where you do what we just talked zone governance control, which is at the environment level. Like if you want to have tenant level, like umbrella level control
Mhm.
over how agent would act after it's been deployed, then you have another control plane, which is the Microsoft 365 admin center. You might also have heard of Agent 365, which is the new uh, control plane for the operational stages of agents across different platforms built within or without, with, within or outside of the Microsoft ecosystem. So it can also provide governance for third-party agents, let's say from our partners. So you really
Mm.
need this layered approach for the full end-to-end governance. I recommend ITMs to start from the Power Platform admin center to get familiar with the controls and policies that are in close vicinity with Copilot Studio. But if you want to have the end-to-end journey taken care of, especially advanced security controls integrated with Entra, Defender, and Purview, I would say the Mac, the Microsoft 365 admin center, and 365 control plane is somewhere that
Mm.
you need to take a look as well.
Mm. And so I think a little bit, who owns an agent? Is it the business or is it an IT topic?
It is a very interesting and comp complicated question. I would say this is a very diplomatic answer, but ultimately it needs to be a combined ownership, and different
Mhm.
teams should own different things, right? And this is what we talked about in the IT Center of Excellence or AI Center of Excellence concept as well, is that to enable Asian innovation is really a team effort. Let's say there's a business team who understand the business process and their day-to-day routine intimately. They're the ones who would feel the benefit and the impact of agents' efficiency and day-to-day process automation the most. And then they understand their challenges and then their pain points and inefficiencies the most. So they're the ones who should be responsible for summarizing the business process that needs to be automated, that needs to be um, consolidated into agent workflows, right? So they are the one who needs to provide the business logic and knowledge. And obviously, there's the IT team. IT team needs to give the business team or the frontline team the knowledge and make them feel comfortable and confident about turning those knowledge and business process expertise into tangible agents and technology that they can replicate for the rest of the organization. And obviously, there's also the executive team who are responsible for sponsoring these activities, making sure that IT have enough resource, have enough influence over other teams around how to do governance, around how to do security, around how to implement best practices and not promote agent sprawl. As we know, if you don't have agent governance structure in place, then people still innovate. It's just they create shadow agents, they create shadow processes and automations, and it becomes really hard for the security measures to be in place because who knows what would happen if an employee connects a sensitive data set, let's say with their customers' names and social security name numbers, directly with a public facing agent. And the agent does not have any prompt injection protection mechanism, and anyone can ask questions about their users' social security or even credit card information. That would be a nightmare scenario. So again, back to your point, it should be a collaboration between different teams, and it should be a trusted platform and excellent center of excellence structure.
Mm. And from your experience, how should organizations manage the agent lifecycle?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, again, I'll go back to the origins of Power Platform. Power Platform introduced the concept of application lifecycle management through pipelines.
Mhm.
Typically, there are the idea of solutions within the Power Platform, right? You can build a solution. Essentially, it's kind of like a repo in GitHub, and then you can move the solution along with its dependencies through different environments with different level of control, as we just talked about the zone governance concept. And you can do lifecycle management that way, right? You can put a solution into a experimentation zone, and then a yellow zone, and then the red zone. And
Mm.
then the IT would set up governance policies around what are the requirements for the red zones and what does it mean for an organization to take a solution into production. So those are the concepts that exist within Power Platform. Obviously, within the innovation community of Copilot Studio, we also try and make the platform more extensible to third-party integrations. So it is not uncommon to see people use GitHub as another tool for source control or Azure DevOps, which we all always recommend and to experiment with because you never know, which platform works the best for your organization's unique reality. So I would say that if you are someone who's thinking about version control, lifecycle management, try different things, try different templates. And then there are plenty of guidance from the Copilot Studio adoption side or the Copilot adoption teams on best practices and blog that you would found really helpful. I'm sure a lot of audience of this podcast have heard of them and used them. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us as well. And we have tech community where we answer questions and AKA forums. So yeah, those are all great resources that can you leverage to understand those resources.
Mm. Yeah, I think we are now in an era where we have the agent to agent or multi agent or build this stuff. So, and then I think organizations can have hundreds or thousands of agents. Is there a good way m- organization can monitor agent usage?
Absolutely. Again, it goes back to what we just talked about, the layered approach in governance and security. By the way, when we talk about governance, I'm using this term very loosely. When I say governance, it's really a couple of things. It's about the administration of how agents are created, how they can be created, and then how they are secured and protected. And then how can we scale agent across to we just talked about the pipeline, and then the transformation of culture and behavioral patterns of the organization's adoption journey. Right. So when we look at those four things, I think one good thing for the IT admins or anyone who's interested in governing them to think about is what tools is available to me and
Hmm.
how should I combine those tools. Again, it
Mm.
goes back to you have Power Platform Admin Center, and then you have A365. You can set up different levels of policies within those two platforms, and then use those combined efforts to give you a good granularity, but also umbrella control.
Mm. Um, yeah, I think yeah, traditional IT management devices tomorrow IT yeah may manage some of these AI agent. How is the IT department changing?
I think IT is also using agentic workflows to automate their governance, right?
Mm.
Because IT may feel overwhelmed by the amount of innovation that is going on now that not only agents are being populated, but also all kinds of agentic workloads or tools. Let's say GitHub Copilot. it allows agents or applications to quite honestly to be built so fast and
Mm,
iterate so fast. So it's no longer an realistic expectation for IT to be the gatekeeper to manually approve or deny everything, right? They cannot have one-on-one meetings with every innovator every day to walk them through the best practices.
mm,
They need to think about automation and scale as well.
mm,
And again, it goes back to the center of excellence concept is that IT is really an enablement function rather than a policing function. You need to
mhm,
figure out what are the unique and repeated business frictions in your organization in collaboration with your frontline or business owners, and then proactively reach out to them about
mm,
how they use agentic workflows or to automate. And then when it comes to, say, risk management and governance, there you should also have probably agents built for your own workloads, like IT Q&A maybe is a good use case, where you summarize the governance best practices, business process, approval process, application process into uh, a set of grounding documents, and then use agent to answer preliminary questions. Or another good example is approval, right? Let's say a user wanted to submit an agent for publishing. Um, what are the rubrics? What are the criterias for you to approve or deny that agent? You should make that explicit and then pass that knowledge down to users so they can basically do a self check before they submit everything for you. So if they can self identify certain risks or governance loopholes, then they will solve them themselves. Or you can set a set of requirements. Hey, does this agent have authorization? Does this agent have basic sensitive data control over what type of connectors has been connected? Does this agent have basic prompt injection protection established as a part of the platform? All those things should be embedded into those process requirements. And then from there, you would found the escalation rate would reduce by quite a lot.
mm,
Another good thing that IT can start to do in response to this change is to not use default environment anymore, right? So if you have a default environment in the Power Platform concept, and then use that default environment as where people go by default to experiment, then
mm,
after a quick while, there will be a ton of agent sprawl in there, and it will be so hard for the IT admins to clean it up, right? So leveraging features within the Power Platform admin center, like environment routing or personal environment, would help that situation by quite a bit. So I think IT should be at the forefront for understanding what new technology and processes and toolings are available to them, quickly adopt them themselves, and then summarize those as practices and help them to transform their own work as well.
mm. And I think we have all so much wonderful tools from Microsoft. So for administrator, what roles does Microsoft Entra ID plays in this new AI area, agent area?
And that's a great question. I think it is to answer shortly, it's basically the future. Because if you think about the vision that Microsoft have for agents, ultimately we would want agents to be able to perform, to have the capability or possibility to perform at the same level at a human as a human employee. It's not going to replace a human employee for sure. But let's say if I cannot attend a meeting, or if I cannot go to a certain conference, then that agent should be able to embody my knowledge, my point of view, and my judgment, right? So in that regard, with that much of agency, you also need that much of control and governance around it. So really the idea of behind getting every single agent in Entra ID is around, hey, Microsoft, you already have this great infrastructure for managing human employees, and then as you're familiar with in Microsoft 365 Admin Center or other control planes. Why don't we use those knowledge and best practices to manage agentic employees as well? And obviously, the innovation would keep happen for how advanced, how autonomous agents can be. I'm not here to make promises around, hey, like down the line, for how long agents would be just like humans. But why don't we just leverage the existing technology infrastructure so that by the time we get there, or by the time we increase our agents' capabilities, the again, the security can be in place, the policy enforcement can be in place for those agents. So Entra ID is really a important step for us to go towards that, so that the management of agents can be similar or consistent with how we manage human employees.
Mm. Yeah. Um, uh, I started with Debo in Microsoft technology. I came from the data science part. There was one tool. Oh, I hated it at the start. I hated it most. Now it's my favorite. But how important is this Microsoft Purview when we think about AI agents?
Yeah, Purview is I think one of the important cornerstones of making sure agents are performing securely and protected, right? So Purview at its core, it's about protecting data. It's about
Hmm.
protecting data from leaked. It's about protecting data from breached. It's about protecting data from intentionally or unintentionally shared without the bound that is supposed to stay within. Right. So if you think about how an agent acts in runtime, when we are talking about protecting agent, what we're really saying is that we're protecting data, right? Because if the agent does not have access to sensitive data or data that you want to protect, then what is the risk of that agent for your organization really? Is it that it would act in a way that is going to damage your um, damage your business process?
Hmm.
Not quite likely, because you already have a good prompt that's going to set that's been set up to limit that agent's capability. So how do we make sure that, first of all, the access of that agent is protected, is monitored, and then how that agent shares data is protected and monitored is very important. If we use the connector concept within Power Platform to control how agents can access data source and share the data, then on top of that, Purview gives security admins and IT admins really a more granular and more nuanced view on how the agents deal with data. A good example of this is sensitive data labeling, right? So if you ground agents with a sensitive data file, then you set up a policy saying that agents should not share sensitive data outside, then obviously Purview would help agents to enforce that policy. But if you don't have those sense of sensitive data labeling, you cannot do that. And the best part about it is Purview is already integrated with your Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So you don't need to have your employees enforce another layer of manually tag sensitive data labels to your files, to your business processes. This is the first thing. The second thing is um, intended or unintended data sharing. That is not supposed to happen, right? Purview would block you from literally copy and pasting sensitive information into external sources, and then such behavior would also be flagged to IT admins so that they can, target certain unethical behavior inside a risk or so on. So all of these is about prevention and also reaction. You should have data security posture management to understand what are the risks going on in your organization. And when things do happen, there should be immediate response to those risks. Um, and Purview is at the forefront of that.
And I think some agents have to work with sensitive data or have to write or read data that's sensitive. Is there other things or special when I have these kind of agents, how organization can secure them?
Yeah, I would say again, it goes back to the layer approach.
Hmm.
The first layer is you need to have environment level controls. So if you feel like certain things that you just want to make sure the agent never touches, then don't allow those data connectors within certain environments, and then put that business critical agent into that environment. That's the first thing. The second thing is use what we just talked about, the 835 layer or the Microsoft security layer. Right? You can use policy templates to say, hey, all the agent within my tenant have to um, be attached to this Entra access package. And then you can disallow certain application access from those packages. So that's the first thing. If you have to expose certain sensitive data to very specific people, then I would say use the right authentication methods, right? So make sure that you have authentication gates using Entra or other MFA providers, and make sure that those people who should have access to that particular agent is bounded by certain security groups, and they can configure that Entra security group with the access pattern of that agent. Um, the one big best practice is never allow sensitive data to be accessed through agent that is unauthenticated, right? If you want to make sure that you expose sensitive data to specific people, then authentication needs to come in place with a lot of scrutiny.
Um, yeah, I think. What did you think? Can governance become a self-service?
Sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Yeah, can governance become a self-service?
I think that that's the goal. I mean, obviously, not 100% of governance will become self-service, but as we talked about, increasingly the industry is moving towards more automation, and there should be a certain amount of governance that would become self-service. Um, and also, like we talked about, governance is such an all-encompassing thing. The approval process the approval process of agents to be published probably should never be fully self-service, right? There should be always human in the loop for deciding what can go to the entire organization or go public.
Mm,
But things like upskilling, things like knowledge transfer, things like business process summarization or basic rules and guidance, those things should definitely be self-serviced.
mm,
And it can exist in the form of SharePoint. It can exist in the form of agents. It can exist in the form of simply a Word document. But ultimately, again, typically IT admins are overwhelmed, so they need to think about ways to reduce workloads for them and make sure that they're not always working.
mm. And think you in the future AI will eventually govern AI?
Can you say it again? Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. Will in the future, did you think AI eventually govern AI?
I think not fully 100%. Human in the loop will keep being very important, but I do think we're keep moving to a direction where that is happening. One good example of this is that if you go to your agent store in uh, Microsoft 365 Copilot, then there will be an agent called Microsoft 365 Admin Center Agent, the Mac agent. And that agent already can help you to govern a lot of the Mac activities.
Mm,
And we're building towards something that is similar to that within the Power Platform. So,
mhm,
yeah, I do think that uh, those futures and those visions are slowly but surely coming true.
mm. Yeah, especially for me, I living in Europe, Germany, so there's a topic, all yeah, the German laws, but the rest of the world not. It's compliance. uh, How can I think in this multi-agent world, and we have the EU AI Act, and we have done a lot of compliance stuff. How can Microsoft or tools help here? Yeah, to get all these regulations done.
Yeah, this is a great question. I know it's the top of mind for a lot of the highly regulated industries and NGOs. First of all, I would say that this is just my personal advice.
Mhm,
It's probably not gonna be very comprehensive, but I can provide some thoughts on directionally
mhm,
how can IT approach this. Um, and again, it's highly nuanced topic, so don't treat this as like legal advice or anything.
mm,
It does not represent Microsoft's point of view. I would say, first of all, you need to understand your unique reality and the requirements for your industry for compliance. Not every industry, every geo share the same compliance requirement. And from there, you need to consult your legal entities for like, is there a specific framework upon which that you need to follow, right? So the EU AI Act might be a framework, and US might be another. So what are the framework that you need to adhere to? And then based on there are best practices or industry organizations or product that can help you out. In the realm of Copilot Studio, one simple thing that you can ensure that would help you is audit logging, right? So, documenting everything is basically the foundation for compliance. If you don't know what has happened, there's no way for you to do audit trails. There's no way for you to understand your compliance posture. So definitely turn on audit logging within Copilot Studio. And then it goes back to the layered approach. Now with Copilot Studio infrastructure, um, hooked with auto logging, you also need tools like Purview or Defender for you to understand your security logging so that combining those investigation and logging capabilities, you can then morph and kind of sort of bespoke your compliance reporting to the requirements of your governing body. That would be the directional feedback that I'll have.
yeah, interesting. I think a little bit about yeah, AI adaption. I think yeah, technology doesn't create the adoption. It's something. Yeah, it's a tool. It's of the adoption. But what makes an organization successful when they adapt agent?
I think it goes back to what we just talked about, the collaboration between different teams. What
Mhm.
we have seen is organizations that are better at others than others at adoption are typically the teams that have very strong vision for what does great look like in terms of AI center of excellence, and then have top-down support from executive team to sponsor those adoption journey and learning activities. Right. So it needs to be a pull and a push mechanism. The frontline innovators and makers, they need to start experimenting, but also experiment within the scaffoldings that's defined by IT teams or the executive team or the IT center of excellence. And the leadership team should also be very specific about how can the frontline workers adopt these best practices, and then endorse governing the governance structure put in place by IT teams, endorse the activity that would upskill more people, and quite frankly, just put this as a top of mind for the company, right? Because business process automation and efficiency will always benefit um, the company's organizational efficiency in the long run. So I would say start with the AI center of excellence and go from there.
And I think yeah, Microsoft had done a big commitment to AI, and there's coming so many new stuff. Feeling every day there's something new. How yeah, how do you not get overwhelmed? with all these informations.
I do get overwhelmed by all these information, Marco. I'm a victim of that too. Um, yeah, it's just you cannot avoid it. We all know that the world of technology is moving so fast, and it used to be the case that where I can, try to catch up once a month or once a quarter with the newest technology, spend one Friday on the new tech and feel quite confident about, oh, at least I know what is going on right now. It's no longer the case. The speed of innovation is significantly outpacing the human capacity of learning. So I would say that I just acknowledge the fact that feeling overwhelmed will be a new reality. You just need to
Mm,
know what is your priority and what is your area that you really want to get good at, and start small. Another
mm,
thing is my personal guide that I try to follow is try not to think about knowledge retention as progress, because
mhm,
AI is replacing knowledge retention. Um, what really defines progress is your the ability to hone your craft, and the difference between crafting and knowing is really the process of doing, right? So I try to learn by doing, and then try to get deeper onto certain topics based on my own hands-on experience rather than hearing other people's secondhand knowledge. And yeah, that's how I deal with being overwhelmed. What about you?
yeah. Yeah, I have an agent that puts all from LinkedIn and all other sources and makes me a short briefing daily. That's
Yep,
what I do. um,
that's a
yeah,
good
but
way to do it
uh,
too.
when it gets overwhelming, put in the agent world or in the co-pilot world, there's I think oversharing is there this word. How can we prevent from oversharing?
Well, first thing is you need to know what are the things you don't want to share. Defining those boundaries, and that is through in the Microsoft ecosystem, through sensitivity labeling, through um, tagging the right document with the right labels. And from there, the rest of the technology would help you out, right? For instance, if you are in a Microsoft 365 tenant, then you won't be able to have access to things that you don't have access to. That's the first thing. The second thing is, again, leveraging connector policy and environment controls, like we just talked about. Um, and of course, you can also use, like we talked about, Purview and Defender to first prevent sensitive data from being leaked. The second thing is when people do try to jailbreak and do prompt injection, or, you know, try to hallucinate or um, coerce the agent from giving out information, you can have some kind of protection mechanism.
Um, yeah, Microsoft is it's an awesome technology company, but is there any technology that's excited you outside from Microsoft?
Absolutely. I think, to be honest, most of the technology that I'm excited about is a combination of Microsoft technology and open source,
Mm,
right? And you see so many folks from Microsoft contributing to open source,
mm,
sometimes casually, sometimes as their full job. I think that's something that I really love about Microsoft is how much it embraces open source over the years.
mm,
And then you see people like Scott Hanselman, who work on, GitHub Copilot app as IC right now. He's like legendary figure, VP in Microsoft, but he's working in IC capacity right now and working in open source. Um, of course, things like OpenClaw, Hermes agent are good tools to have, and you can find so many quality technology out there that are just being contributed by both human and agents right now. And that's what I love about agentic world as well, is that you can amplify and extend this human goodwill to the open source community. In particular, I would recommend one specific open source technology that is Skills for Copilot Studio. This is a piece of tool that is collaborated between Microsoft employees and the open source community.
Mhm.
Essentially allows coding agent like GitHub Copilot or Claude Code to know how to use the backend of Copilot Studio, right? So if you tell a generic coding agent to build a Copilot Studio agent, it might not understand the schema of how orchestration work in the backend for Copilot Studio. But with that skill, um, GitHub Copilot would be able to connect with your actual Copilot Studio account. It can read your code base. It can read your agent inventory, and then it can help you to modify agents. It can help you to build new tools, build new adaptive cards, things that you want to automate quite a lot, or even evals. Um, so yeah, like just really leverage both the product itself and also the open source tooling that you have available to you, and you would soon become a very capable IT admin.
Is there or have you a favorite, Copilot capability?
Uh, yes. Well, if you're talking about Copilot in general, meaning that if you're talking about Copilot as in Microsoft's agentic
Whoop.
assistants, then I would say my personal favorite is probably GitHub Copilot, either in Visual Studio Code or GitHub Copilot app. I've been recently experimenting with both, and I just found they both have their quirks and features, but I really feel like if you are someone who is already familiar with GitHub and who loves using GitHub as your main source of operations, DevOps, then you would love GitHub Copilot app. It just fits in so well with your grooves, how you think about the entire process, where to a degree where things just make sense, right? Things like you can start a different session with different issue, and then agent would triage for you based on um, issue related automation, and then you can basically turn your open source repo into like a swarm of agents that helps you to look at issues overnight and then help you to identify things that requires your attention. It would be a dream for maintainers of big open source projects, and it can save so much energy and time. Um, yeah, that would probably be my favorite.
Yeah, I think, that's it's a really strong, the GitHub Copilot. I'm more the Azure DevOps fan. I hope, we get a get the Copilot also, yeah, with the same strange, here in the future. Yeah. Um, is there in Copilot Studio, a feature where you wish more people use or know about it?
Yeah, well, Google Studio just announced its new workflow builder and also new orchestrator. So these are very underrated features so far. Like we're trying to do a better job at helping people understand the significance of these features, but ultimately, take time. But my plugin here would be try it out yourself. What defines the new orchestrator is really it would now be able to think and act like the cutting edge coding agent that you are familiar with, like GitHub Copilot. It would reason, it would have agent loops, it will be able to um, use tools and skills in a more smarter way. And you would soon realize that the new agent orchestrator with a new workflow goes way, way beyond than typical what we call process automation now. It has a lot more thinking power. It has a lot more system compatibility. It has a lot more extensibility. So play with it. And we have a lot of resources on uh, Copilot Studio Cat Team's blog, and you should take a look. And we have a lot of examples and templates as well. It would be fun.
Yeah. Awesome. I have to try it out next time. Yeah. So yeah, this was an amazing session. Um, but i- if uh, when you say organization should improve one thing tomorrow, what should it be?
I would say ask yourself, are there people that you would call champions in your organization to enable AI
Hmm.
adoption outside of you, right? Obviously, if it's like a one person organization, that doesn't count. But for a typical organization, like we talked about, having a small group of people serving as the kindling, the seeds for more innovation, and then have those people to help people out and then make sure that they're incentivized to do so. Have hackathons, have innovation summits, have competitions, and then make sure people feel like innovation is encouraged and incentivized. And slowly but surely you'll get there. You just need to start trying.
Yeah. Uh, Normally, my closing question is if listeners remember one lesson from today, what should it be? But I think we have so many good lessons. So I do another closing question. What did you think when we meet in a year here on the podcast? What will we discuss then?
I think we'll be discussing autonomous agents. I think we'll be discussing now that agents are becoming more capable, as you've seen from Microsoft Scout, which is based on open source architecture. How do we govern and secure these increasingly more well connected, well reasoned, and autonomous agent? With
Mm,
greater capability comes with greater responsibility, and um, governance and security needs to keep up. I think that
mm.
would be a good follow up.
Yeah, then yeah, awesome. Then thank you so much, Thomas, for joining me today on the MC65 FM podcast. Yeah, today's conversation highlighted something, yeah, every organization needs to hear. Successful AI isn't just about building intelligent agents, it's about governing them responsibility, security, and scalable. Yeah, and I think we explore how Copilot Studio enables enterprises ready AI, why governance, yeah, accelerated rather than slows innovation, and how IT is evolving from yeah, managing devices to managing intelligent digital coworkers. So yeah, thank you so much for being here and for your time. So goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you, Mirko, for having me.